Thank you for listening to the BJJ Brick Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back, my friends, to the BJJ Break Podcast. This is episode 120. Today we have an interview with Justin Rader. My name is Byron. I'm here with my good buddy Gary.
How's everybody doing today?
We're doing great. How could you not be doing great with a Justin Rader interview loaded up on your iPod or Android device or whatever you have?
Whatever you're listening to it on. Justin Rader is going to be coming live and uncensored to you.
Yes.
So, yeah.
It's a clean episode, though, so that's nice.
It's a clean episode, but Justin was a phenomenal grappler, phenomenal person, but Byron and I I talked about it last week that we went through a seminar, and the guy's just motivating. So I can tell you, just from doing a seminar with him, I've never been more motivated after the seminar. It's not, I learned a lot of great stuff, but just his passion. Every time he opens his mouth and talks about jiu-jitsu, that passion just comes through, and it really got me fired up to train and try to become a better jiu-jitsu artist.
Yep. And Gary, you might remember from the seminar, one of the things I picked up on was his explanation of how important certain aspects of the stand-up game are for jiu-jitsu. And how, what's the key to having a good takedown, or the key to having a good takedown defense. And that stood out for me, a couple of years ago when he actually said it. And so we get basically the same, similar advice that what he gave during his seminar. And you get that for free today, from Justin himself. So you get some great advice about maybe tweaking your stand-up game, or just the way you think about how it's going. Should help you out.
Yeah, and your stand-up's so important. I think a lot of times people neglect their stand-up, just work the ground game, but stand-up is very important, and I was one of those guys that used to neglect it, and I've been spending a lot more time on it, and it's fun. It's made me a better grappler. So do not neglect your stand-up.
Yep. Speaking of not neglecting your stand-up, if you would like to get a weekly email about the BJJ Brick Podcast, you can go to the website, bjjbrick.com, or Facebook, and put your email and name in there. And every Tuesday, boom, we send out an email, and it will help your stand-up a little bit, maybe. I don't know how it would. But,
well, it could help your stand-up because sometimes you have to stand up to get your emails, I guess.
Yeah,
so that could work. Yeah.
I tried to make it smooth.
We're reaching for that.
Yeah, I tried to make a smooth transition by making it fast, but I just made an odd transition sound smooth verbally, but the words didn't make any sense.
Hey, I liked it, Byron.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate that.
Speaking of liking stuff from Byron, definitely check out Byron's audiobook, Your First Year in Jiu-Jitsu, First Year in BJJ. It's $11.99. It's 2.5 hours of, just like our podcast, Byron walking you through the pitfalls and everything you're going to run into in your first year to make your first year that much more productive, to help you out, to help you crash through those barriers you're going to see in your first year. And your first year is a tough year. A lot of people do drop out in their first year, and that's one of the things why Byron made this, to make your first year easier. The people who stick the first year, normally you're going to keep going. And that's what we're here for. We're here to try to spread the joy of jiu-jitsu to everybody, get everybody training. The more people that train, the better. So definitely check out Your First Year in BJJ, $11.99, a bunch of chapters, stuff you're going to run into your first year. And we'll have a link on our page there. So definitely check it out. And basically it's a good way to support the show. The money goes to help us put this show on.
Yep, we thank you for that. Any support we get is much appreciated.
And today we have an awesome quote. It's by a man named Robert Frost, who is not a jiu-jitsu artist, but I think the majority of the people are going to know who he is. And the last name Frost comes in perfect with all the blizzards going on in the East Coast right now. So I think we picked a good one here. But Robert Frost says, in 3 words, I can sum up everything I've learned about life.
Whoa.
It goes on. So once again, in 3 words, I can sum up everything I've learned about life. It goes on. And, I basically think what he's saying is, no matter what happens, it's life's still going to be there. Byron and I were talking about. It's like you lose a tournament, big deal. Life goes on. You're gonna be able to train later on in the day. You're gonna go get something to eat, go watch a movie. Life's gonna go on. Your girlfriend breaks up with you. The good thing about that is you got more time to do jiu-jitsu, so that's always good. Life goes on. It's, we're just going to keep plugging away and just keep going at it.
I like your examples, Gary. I want to remind everybody that Robert Frost did pass away in 1963. So I don't know, it doesn't like void out his quote by any means, but life goes on for a while,
Yeah. Well, you think, here we are. You said 1963, 73, 83, 93, 03, 13, 40 some years later, we're talking about them. Life goes on.
There we go. Yeah. But I like your examples, Gary. You lose a tournament, we get flip it around. You win a tournament.
Yeah.
Life goes on. I hear this quite a few times.
You crush people in a tournament. Life goes on.
Well, people will train very hard for a tournament, go out and win it, and feel great that day. Next day feel good about it. And then like a week or two later, they feel like almost very little satisfaction from the past accomplishment of winning that tournament. Life goes on. It's going to move on. Keep working for the next goal.
I wear the medal everywhere I go for about 3 or 4 years afterwards.
If, in fact, Gary, back in his football days, if Coach would have put him in.
Oh, we would have won state champion.
Yeah, you guys would have won for sure.
Yeah, me and Uncle Rico, we were something else.
If you just that last play, if he'd have put you guys in.
Yep. But, we're in one state.
The other quote you had, the other thing about the quote was if your girlfriend breaks up with you, your boyfriend breaks up with you, life goes on. Well, also if you go from single to being with somebody or even married, life still goes on. Jiu-jitsu is still going on with or without you, and your friends are still getting together every night or every other night whenever they do, and they're training, and that should be noticed.
And after you're married, when your friends are training, you're probably sitting at home, crocheting, not allowed to train. No, I'm kidding. But did you see what Byron did? Everything I gave, he did the exact opposite. I said you lose a tournament, life goes on. Byron's like, you win one. I say you break up with your girlfriend, you get to train more, life goes on. Byron's like, you get married, life goes on. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's going to proceed regardless. It's how you react, and it's living in the present. I think is a big part of this quote.
Yeah, definitely. I like that. Live in the present.
Because you really have no other choice other than Gary and his football dreams that didn't quite happen.
Yeah.
Gary, life goes on, and so does our segments. They proceed from one to the other, and we talk about introduce our show, talk about the audiobook, how you can support the show, the quote. Time to move on to the article of the week, where every week we bring you a different article, sometimes jiu-jitsu related, sometimes not. But we're going to talk to you about this article and learn from it. So this is 7 powerful ways to fail better and then succeed sooner. And Gary, why is it important to realize how to fail better?
Well, I guess you're realizing how to fail better. First of all, you're learning every time you fail. I personally think, failing is going to really help you. But I think what happens sometimes when people fail, it's kind of like the kid who takes his ball away from everybody else. He gets mad, takes his ball, and nobody can play. Yeah. I think sometimes people fail and they just quit. They curl up into a ball and don't do that again, or afraid to take chances, and that's how you learn. You learn from your failure. You learn from taking chances. You learn from doing things that you don't normally do. Go out on a limb, try stuff, and you're gonna fail. You're gonna fail numerous times. I mean, we all have failed numerous times, except for Byron. And, it's going to make us better. We're going to learn from it. Keep your eyes open and learn from that failure.
In jiu-jitsu, there's failing on multiple levels. I mean, you could fail to perform a sweep or finish your submission. You could fail and get tapped. You could fail at a match and not do so well and lose or disqualified. You could fail to make weight, or like the big fail, it would be you fail to show up to class and you kind of just fade out into into, not doing jiu-jitsu anymore. That's a pretty big fail, I think, in jiu-jitsu. But there's multiple ways to fail.
Are these really fails? We keep calling it a fail.
Well, they're things you can learn from, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm sitting there thinking. I mean, as we're talking about it, because I've always said, hey, it's great to fail. But like a fail, like what we were talking about last week, about the use of words, the challenge, the challenges.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how great of a word fail is. Fail is a bad term, a derogatory term. But you think about it, if you're smart, you should be learning every time you fail. So it's really positive.
It's true.
So,
Gary,
yeah.
One thing I do know about the word fail is you type in the word fail on YouTube and then any other word, and it's going to be funny.
Yeah,
so
it's going to be funny.
But okay, so back on track. Like let's say I have a small failure in jiu-jitsu. We'll just use that word because that's what the article is talking about. But I'm rolling with, let's say I'm a blue belt. I roll the purple belt, and I get caught in a Kimura. Was that a higher level belt caught me? I had a little breakdown in my game. I got caught. Maybe next time a blue belt that usually is a Kimura, I tighten things up. I learn from my mistakes. I ask, what could I have done differently on this one? How are you setting that up? I try to figure out what's going on. And maybe people of my own skill level aren't able to catch me as easy because I've learned from my fail. I didn't get upset. I didn't storm off. I don't refuse to train with this person anymore. That the small failure, if used correctly, could be like a long-term learning tool in a lot of things.
Yeah, that's a great point you were talking about. Somebody catches you in Kimura, instead of just being upset that he got you in that, you'll figure out ways to not let that happen again. Hey, maybe I need to tuck my elbow. Maybe I need to do this, do that. But you turn it into a positive. You're getting better. You're bettering yourself.
Yep.
That.
They have lots of tips here about failing and how to fail better. And this is not even a sports article, but it says talk about your failures. And this is I think kind of what we're discussing about with the if you get caught by upper belt or you get caught by a lower belt. Asking a question or two after it happens could be a great way to learn from this, opposed to just thinking, well, what happened? He got, north-south and I got nailed in the Kimura. There's nothing I could have done about it. If I take the 10 seconds, maybe after the roll or maybe at the end of class and say, is there any way I could have done that a little differently and maybe got out of it? And, talk about it. Admit, you can't, there's no point in acting like it didn't happen. It ain't that big a deal anyway, but like you could choose to learn from it and you might be getting tapped like 40 times in the class and you can't, learn from all of them at the same time. But if something keeps occurring, talk about it, ask about it, get questions, ask your instructor, your professor. And that's how, there's one way you could take what would be like a little failure and learn from it by acknowledging it and talking with people about it.
Yeah, and what you talk about, acknowledging it, and their fourth point is be courageous and honest. And you can't get better if you're not honest about your mistakes, that you make. You can't just, sugarcoat them or soft pedal them. You've got to learn from them. You've got to say, man, I made this mistake. Your teammates, hey, you made that mistake. I mean, they're supportive and everything, but you have to have the courage and bravery to say, hey, I made this mistake. Once you say that, you kind of open up and now it's time to learn from that mistake. But, when you make one, own up to it. I mean, we all make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes except for Byron.
Oh, I made it. One time I thought I was wrong, Gary. And that was clearly a mistake.
About the only mistake you've ever made is when you asked me to be on your podcast. Your podcast would be great if it wasn't for me.
We'd be at episode like 121 right now.
Yeah.
Instead of 120. Ridiculous, Gary. Although we haven't missed one, so I don't know where I would have snuck one in there, but...
you would have done 2 1 week.
Oh, man. Overachiever.
Yep.
Another thing that, Gary, I've made plenty of mistakes. But, being like resilient to the fact that you're failing and not let that really affect you. Understand that failing is an important part of the learning process. If you find yourself as the brown belt or black belt at the school and there's nobody else but white belts, you're not gonna fail very much. You're not gonna get caught very much. You're not gonna have anybody really pushing you, and your own growth is gonna be kind of stunted. You know, it's like you're like smoking cigarettes as a kid. You're gonna stunt your growth. You know, Gary.
Yeah,
may not be the best example, but you gotta be in the room where you're pushed to failure sometimes, and that it's okay. And that's going to be a good place to grow. You know, fail, and then next time fail better. You know, don't fail the exact same way you did last time.
Yep. I'm telling you, another way to fail better is number 6 here. Watch for potential traps, and this is the trap of escalating commitment. You get so deeply into one approach, you can't let go of it. You're basically keep going down that same path. I mean, let's talk about jiu-jitsu. You just keep doing that same takedown where, you know, your neck is exposed, and every time you get the takedown, you get guillotined every single time. But you keep doing it. You keep going over and over again. You keep going into that dead end, and you're not finding ways around it. So, you know, when you do run into that situation, you know, you've got to use all these other things. We're talking about being honest. Hey, this isn't working. Let's find another way. Like maybe I should work on a different takedown where my neck's not exposed. You know, maybe even this isn't the best takedown. Let's hesitate. You know, let's stop. Let's find another way to go about this. So don't just keep plugging the same thing over and over again if it's not working.
Yep. That's a good one there, Gary. There's more on the list here. It's not a list that's designed for jiu-jitsu, but we have kind of molded it to fit our own needs and learned from it in that respect. So it was kind of a nice thing. It's on inc.com. It was just probably some huge website, but I don't know about it.
Yeah. But so definitely, you know, just, you know, every time you think something's a failure, is it really a failure? You know, you need to learn from it. And, you know, we'd like to, hear from you guys. If you've had a time where you've learned from something that didn't go right off the bat, but you learned something from it, you know, post on our Facebook page. Let us know. We'd like to see that.
Yep, it's we want to see your failures so we can feel better about ourselves.
Well, not Byron, because he doesn't fail. We've already went over that twice. Well, it's the third time.
Man, Gary, you're setting me up for too much. I'm too big to fail.
Yeah, just like our economy, you know, the big banks.
Oh man, I'm in deep water now. Well, we'll put a link to the article in the show notes. We're excited to bring Justin Rader on the podcast here. We've, like Gary said, we've met him before. He's a great guy. If you have a chance to do a seminar with Justin, do it. You know, we had Sepp Smith on here a little bit ago, and he said he had Justin out there, and he had an amazing seminar. And so,
can you imagine learning from Seth and Justin?
A good day.
Yeah, but I don't think that's like winning the lottery.
Yeah. So this interview, we talk about lots of different things. Takedowns, we talk about, you know, he's big into teaching the kids class, and he shares his story about when he was a kid learning wrestling, and now he's a coach teaching jiu-jitsu, and how he's maybe done some things differently now that he's in the coaching spot, and some things maybe he does similarly than what he went through. So very interesting conversation. This is Justin Rader.
Diary of the World's Most Interesting Grappler. This is a reading from my diary. As I made my way to the North Pole, my goal was to find a place up there to train. For this is one of the few places on my map that I have never trained. Dear Diary, I have been in this white desert of the North Pole for 24 days, and it has occurred to me that my team of dogs don't have my best interest in their hearts. While I was doing my morning forward rolls, some of my dogs took it upon themselves to defecate in my direct path. I failed to realize this was happening. I rolled in most of the poop, some of it even twice. This may have ruined my gi. I fear this may be my last entry. Tomorrow is uncertain for me. These may not be men's best friends after all. I don't always listen to podcasts, but when I do, I prefer the BJJ Brick podcast. Stay sweaty, my friends.
All right, my friends, I'm happy and excited to bring Justin Rader to the BJJ Brick podcast. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you guys for having me.
Happy to have you on. You've always been somebody who I've been watching compete since I was a blue belt, and you're close to us geographically. Oklahoma and Kansas are neighboring states if the listeners aren't quite the geography experts. But so I've been fortunate to watch you grapple from blue belt on up, and it's been a lot of fun watching you. But if somebody hasn't gotten to know you yet, or maybe they're new to the sport, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your personal history?
Yeah, I got started in martial arts at a very young age. My father got me started at age 4 years old, right about age 4 years old, maybe a little after I turned 4. He started me in wrestling and taekwondo at that point in time, and so I wrestled all the way up through high school. I stopped taekwondo right about the age of 12 or 13, right around there, and I began training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu here in Oklahoma City under Professor Rafael Lovato Sr., and then his son now, Professor Rafael Lovato Jr., who is my coach right now. And so yeah, and I've been there ever since. I actually stopped wrestling in high school, and I just continued on with jiu-jitsu. I considered walking on to the University of Oklahoma, but at that point in time, I felt already a little bit more accomplished in jiu-jitsu, like I could go farther with that, and so I made the decision to stick with jiu-jitsu. And I'm actually still here in Oklahoma City today, and I teach and train now at Professor Rafael Lovato's school.
That's great. It's nice having you guys so close, and being able to keep up with you guys and what you're doing. Could you tell me like a little bit about your grappling style and how you, when you compete, maybe some of the things that you do that's a little different than most people?
Yeah, I mean, you see it nowadays in the sport jiu-jitsu scene. It's almost a race to who can pull guard first. And that's absolutely 100% not in my DNA at all. Before I ever began jiu-jitsu and submission grappling, of course, I had already 8 years of wrestling experience. And so wrestling rules, I mean, being on your back is the absolute wrong thing to do. You lose matches and give up points and get pinned that way. So when I started, I did what I knew for the most part, which was takedowns. And so yeah, I would describe now my grappling style, as long as I've been training both wrestling and jiu-jitsu, as a very hybrid kind of style. I take the best things that I can use from wrestling into my jiu-jitsu game. I take the best things that I know that fit into my game from jiu-jitsu, and I kind of blend them together. So I have a very aggressive, always kind of in your face, pushing forward kind of style, always keeping the pressure on you. I'm very much a takedown artist, and I try to, put you on your back and then just go right away to work with, the pressure passing and trying to grind and smash you out until you quit and break, and then give me what I want.
And you're pretty well known for a couple of different submissions. Could you tell us about those?
Yeah, I would say probably the one that I get the most, that I'm most well known for, is the calf slicer, which has always been one of my most favorite submissions. I remember when I first learned that, I was a yellow belt at the time, and that was kind of like back, even before they had like all these, new rules of, this is legal at this belt and this is legal at this belt. Or there really weren't many of those rules back when I started, and especially in the training room, there were no rules, as opposed to like, at this academy you can only train to this certain belt level's rules because you're sparring with him and he doesn't know quote unquote toe holds or calf slicers or whatever it might be, which I do have my own opinions about. But I just have my own opinions about those things. Not saying that any one academy or any one place is doing the right or wrong thing. But, I started, that was probably the one that I'm most well known for. And, so I began working that one, from a real early age. And then it wasn't until I actually became a purple belt that I actually, working with Professor Rafael, found more ways to actually set that submission up, and I added them in right away.
And you've been able to get a lot of calf slicers in competition, is that correct?
Yeah, I've got probably at least 8 or 9.
And you're also known for when somebody turtles your front headlock attacks. Is that?
Oh yes, yeah. I have a very strong, front headlock and guillotine game as well. It's not one that I finish all the time or anything, but certainly helps me in a lot of regards. And the fact that you don't see me finish it a lot kind of speaks to its effectiveness, because I use it to set up a lot of things too. Getting to the back so I can insert my leg to get the calf slicer. But the whole front headlock thing really comes from wrestling. I had a very strong front headlock back when I used to wrestle. In high school, I was really good because, of course, in wrestling, you don't want to give up the turtle position or your back, because that you lose points in wrestling when that happens. And so I got really good at trying to shuffle around and then whipping people over to their backs to expose their back to pin them with. And so it was, one of my favorite moves in high school, and I just kind of, kept working with it because I end up there a lot in jiu-jitsu. A lot of people will like to turtle to not give up the points, usually for passing. And so I find that position quite often, actually, and just once again blended it right into my game.
That's great, and it's nice to see how your game you've blended it into your game. You found yourself there a lot, and you've made changes to make that a strong position for yourself. I just out of curiosity, you wrestled through high school? Is that what you said earlier?
Yes, yeah, I wrestled all the way up through high school, and then my senior year I finished as a state runner-up here in Oklahoma, and I was going to go to the University of Oklahoma after that, and so I kind of just considered whether I would walk on or not, and I stuck with just doing jiu-jitsu. So it was always for the next 3 years while I was at OU in Norman. It was about a 45-minute to an hour drive, depending on traffic, from Norman back to the academy, but I did it every night.
Wow, that's a lot of dedication. And nowadays you live a little closer, and you're teaching more, and you're training. Are you training? How's your training compare?
Yeah, I get to I train probably about as much as I always have and always used to. Like I said, I drove back from Norman every night, but my gosh, it's so much easier now. I live about 8 minutes north of the academy now here in Oklahoma City, and it's awesome. So I have a lot more time during the day. I'm able to work in a lot more strength and conditioning sessions because I'm not actually doing school anymore, thank goodness. And so I have a lot more time to put into that, and I have a lot more time to invest and put in to the programs that I teach out here. I teach the kids program out here at the academy, and also the women's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu only program as well out here. And they're an absolute blast, and I love doing it. And it really some people ask me sometimes, does it get too busy? Do you find not time to train or whatnot? And I just don't do well just sitting around and just training myself. I don't have anything else in my life, so I think I'd probably go bat nuts or something. If I was just sitting here inside my house without things to work on, things to do, how can I improve this program? What can I do for this student? What might work for his game, her game? Different things. What can I do for the program overall? How can I make it better? I work for probably a couple hours just about every day, even if it is just brainstorming on that kind of thing. I keep all the rosters. I make the testing lists. So it's great.
Wow, that's good. I'm glad. It sounds like you've got a good thing going for you over there. You mentioned that you play a lot of top game. You like to go for the takedown, end up on top. It seems like to me somebody who is on top and needing to pass somebody's guard, they have a different riddle to solve than the guard player, because the guard player knows the type of guard they're going to play, and they have a big incentive to funnel the match towards that type of guard. The top person, you have to almost be able to deal with every type of guard in order to pass. Is that accurate, or do you try to pass in a way that you'll avoid their games?
Yeah, it does kind of depend on how they react and what they give you. To be really honest, I would say that there are a lot more guard playing styles in games than there are passing styles in games. I kind of break passing down into, 3 different levels, outside, mid-level range, and then smash passing. And so the best approach, in my opinion, is not just always using one, but, kind of combining and blending, outside mid-level range and smash passing. It's kind of how I've always approached it. I like to always keep the pressure on, and I like to get started with my passing game first. So a lot of times it's easier to use the outside, depending on the way the takedown happens. Sometimes off takedowns you can get right into smash passing as well, and that's great. So just depending on where you're at, or maybe they've recovered. I like to use a lot of passing from the outside, bullfight passing, to find my range, and then kind of work in from there. Always keeping the pressure on, making sure that I always clear the feet off my biceps if spider's being played, and just working to smash my way in, get all the way to smash passing, and forcing the half guard kind of style, which is honestly probably my most favorite position in the art, because I can really put a lot of pressure and slowly and methodically work my way to side control or mount, and then from there all you're worried about is the finish and just staying one step ahead.
Sounds good. You've got some pretty strong opinions about the current rule set in Jiu-Jitsu. Could you tell us a little bit about those? Yes.
I began fighting MMA in the year 2014, and you kind of go, you think, okay, well, I was, successful in Jiu-Jitsu, I should be successful in MMA, and I, soon realized a lot of the, disparities of the rules in Jiu-Jitsu. I no longer really believe that they prepare you to do, necessarily all that well. And, so there's so many problems, in my opinion, with the rule sets nowadays, even if you don't want to pursue MMA. When I think about what this art was created for, it's a self-defense art. It should be based around every situation in this art should be based around, a self-defense, if you think about it, situation. And so you can use, either self-defense or MMA to kind of guide your rules making is what I would do, which the rules right now don't favor, right now. And I don't know exactly how the evolution of it happened, but right now in the current state of Jiu-Jitsu, the rules seem to favor and the bottom guy and put the burden on the guy on top, which makes completely no sense, because, let's face it, the majority of the time the person on top is going to be able to strike the person on bottom with a lot more power and ability to damage their opponent that is on the bottom. Now, there are, rare cases, and when I say things like that, it's a must that I qualify. I'm talking about two grappling, opponents, or two fighting opponents of, equal knowledge base. And so if the knowledge base is equal, well, then you have to understand your bottom game is probably not going to be nearly as effective as it's going to be against someone who has absolutely zero, experience or knowledge base in that regard. So you can't say, some of these anomalies, oh, well, this person he's doing it without, throwing many strikes and playing from his back, and that's fine. And there will always be anomalies, those exceptions to the rule. But for the whole majority, when you finally run into someone of equal knowledge base as you, trust me, you're going to want to be on top. And so why the rules now seem to favor the guy on bottom and place the burden on the guy on top, I don't really know how or why that happened, but I disagree with it. So there are a number of rules that I really disagree with. I actually took the time not too long ago, about 3 or 4 hours, I sat down and I wrote out a complete rules system that I think would be best. And so I'll just name some highlights from those. Okay. First of all, I would give a -1 for pulling guard. Okay, you assume in that situation, and again, it's all predicated off of two combatants of equal skill level. By doing that, you assume an inferior position. Okay, right off the bat. So
Okay.
we give at the very least a -1. I've considered a -2, but right now where I'm at, I would give it a -1. Now, to help in that regard, you could go right to work from your guard, which you should do. You shouldn't ever feel just the ability to just sit back and relax and be like, oh, I'm in my guard. I'm going to like sit here with closed guard for 9 minutes. Okay. And then that last minute, I'm going to like balls to the wall, get a quick sweep or something like that, and end up on top and win. Not that there's necessarily anything wrong with that last minute, but the whole first 9 minutes, if you just sitting there on your back, not doing anything, well, there's a problem there. And to be honest, stalling calls in this sport right now are still not enforced the way that they should be. So we have that problem as well, and I'll get to that in a moment. But so you have that whole first 9 minutes of, you sitting on your back where, in a situation like that, again, of someone of equal skill and knowledge base is probably going to be bashing your face in. Let's just call it what it is. And that's how I see it, and that's my opinion right now. So I would give a -1 for pulling guard right off the bat if that's what you chose to do. Now, if you did, however, use your guard in such a way that it didn't get past, maybe you tried to go to work but nothing was happening, and let's say you're able to find your way back to your feet, I also believe that is an important skill, being able to get back to your feet. Very similar to what they have in wrestling. Of course, they penalize you for being on your back in wrestling, which I'm not going to do here in jiu-jitsu because this is a ground fighting art. So to hold that integrity, I would give you a score, a point, if you were able to stand back up. So you could get rid of that -1 if that so chose to be the case. So that's how I would, work around the whole guard pulling deal. That way I don't have to absolutely abolish guard pulling and make it pretty much a wrestling match. Because it is important to know how to fight from your back, off your back, use your back skills to get submissions, get on top, or back to your feet, which is an important skill which I believe is overlooked in the art right now as well, based on the rules of what they say is favorable to do. I would also abolish advantages immediately. Done. Gone. Over. Don't want to see them ever again. I do not understand why advantages even exist. Now, to score a quote-unquote like half point or any sort of point for doing something almost or halfway does not promote fighters, does not promote combatants to be more aggressive. It actually does the exact opposite. It gives them a safety net to fall back on. Oh, I'm pulling guard, okay. Boom, I shoot a quick omoplata. I do just enough to get an advantage for it, and then I go back to close guard and I hold you there and I win. And I never had to work off my back at all. Okay, well, you see how there are problems with that, okay? And let's be honest, the rules right now, the way that they are written, you could win by doing that. You could win a match by doing that, not ever having to once work off your back, nor ever having the pressure or burden to actually finish that omoplata. So why advantages are given for submissions and near scores is just something I don't and I've never understood it. And this is nothing new coming from me. I have been saying this for over the past 10 years now. I've never agreed with advantages. I've, competed in all of the, biggest tournaments that there are in this sport, and I've just continued to put up with it and try to, overcome it. But I have never once agreed with it, So I would abolish advantages immediately. I would also do away with refs' decisions. I absolutely believe that that's just not the way to go. I would insert, right now anyway, an overtime of some sort. If you don't like sudden death, which I actually do like, perhaps another way, and I'm still working on what exactly I would do in that regard, but I would also do that. So those are some of the, big highlights of what I would do and change and why.
Would you keep the score system as far as like a sweep and taking the back and mount the same?
Oh, that's another excellent question, and I've thought a lot about that too. And for the most part, yes, but I wouldn't necessarily chain like a guard pass to mount the same. A guard pass to mount, I would only give 5 points instead of 7. So I would give the mount half the number of points that it's worth in a situation or scenario where they would be strung together. Because passing obviously is very important, but passing to mount and making that score 7 whole points just for that movement, even though mount is an extremely dominant position and you should finish and shouldn't lose the mount. Guys are good. Guys defend mount. Guys get up from bottom or whatnot. To be down by 7 points is quite a lot to come back from and gives too much, in my opinion, a safety net for the other guy to work for. So I would chain them, but I would, in instances like that, or maybe a sweep to the back, which could be worth 6, could be worth 4, or something of that nature. Maybe then it's only worth 4 in that regard. I would also give the other thing, and that's a good question too. The turtle position, being on top, gets you nothing. And that's absolutely wrong, in my opinion. Absolutely wrong. I think if you pass someone's guard, 3 points, I think and keep them on their back, I think that's a fine score. But let's say the person turtles and you're on top turtle. Well, now once again, let's say I'm on top in turtle and we're 2 combatants of equal knowledge base. Before you're able to defend that turtle, very likely you're probably going to take some heavy shots and heavy punches and heavy strikes, as I'm setting up to take your back in a real actual situation. Now, once again, we're not throwing punches, and this is a sport, and yes, some things will fall short of that integrity, making it the sport, but we should try to make it as real as possible. So in my regard, I would also give a 2 points for, if you sprawl and spun around behind, and you take that top dominant position, which can be extremely dominant position in MMA, then absolutely you should be awarded points. I would award 2 points. And if you were passing guard and they turtled, again, 2 points, because it's such an advantageous position. Have you worked your way all the way to the back? No, not quite yet. But again, if you chain those 2 together, then, you get 2 more points for the back with both hooks. And then once again, now we have 4 points, So the fact that you get nothing for the turtle position, in my opinion, I believe is wrong. Or not necessarily wrong, I just don't agree completely with it because it is such a dominant position. And so I would, maybe break up the number of scores. Like, if I just, somehow shot straight to the back with both hooks and or body triangle, perhaps I might give 4 points for it there. I'd have to just go through every scenario that comes up, but that is another thing that I would change.
Your -1 for the guard pull. At first, people could see that and say, "Oh, he's going to try to kill the guard game," but really no, because if I pull guard on somebody, I'm betting that I could do something with my guard. I'm betting that Absolutely. I can score 2 points, which would make 2 points. It covers the 1, or I could submit you. And so in both those situations, the -1, to be down a point, but I will have scored a point from the position that I chose to put myself in. So that's kind of how I see that.
And it also promotes so many other things too. You then have to know takedown defense. I mean, right now I can walk forward towards you, and I just right now most of the time, and from what I've seen in many of the competitions, I don't know exactly the way the rules are written. I always believed you had to get a grip of some sort before you could pull guard. But nowadays, and I've been subject to it my entire jiu-jitsu and grappling competition career of people barely touching my fingertips and then just having a seat. You don't need takedown defense then if that is your game and strategy. And the rules right now promote that because there is no penalty, therefore, for it. So it promotes you to learn. You have to learn takedown defense. You have to learn takedown offense. If there's 20 seconds left in a match and you both somehow find yourself back on your feet and you're winning by 1 point, well, you can't just pull guard and save yourself, the hassle of having to deal with takedowns and avoid it altogether. No, you're going to have to be able to stand in there, and you can't just run. Of course, that would be stalling, which I actually didn't get to in a moment, and I'll get to that in a moment. But you can't just run out of bounds, or you can't just run straight backwards. You're going to have to be able to stand in there, defend the takedown for 20 seconds, perhaps even get your way on top. It would make better grapplers overall. all across the board. They would be better in all positions. Submissions would not be given advantages for. You would then be that takes away that safety net. Then the burden is on you. You have to finish this submission, or you're going to lose. And yes, you're losing a match right now, but if you were actually in that position and you lost that submission, well, chances are good you're probably taking some heavy shots to the face. So, in that regard, you shouldn't have some safety that you think you can just fall back on. Think about the evolution that would happen in our art. We would actually have people that they're motivated 10 times more to finish and get those submissions. And it would take the evolution of our art to an entirely new level. I 100% truly believe that. And then, of course, instead, it almost seems like advantages and everything were trying to be used in place of stalling and blah, 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 or whatever. And I really wish it hadn't gone that way. I really wish we'd just been harsher on something. Because, again, it's a sport. It's an art. We're going to take away some of the integrity. Like, if I was on top in a real fight, there ain't no one telling me I'm stalling on top if I need to stay on top as long as I need to stay on top. But this is an art. This is a sport. So, I should be made to try to progress my position, my advantage. And therefore, if we do need harsher stalling calls made in this art, then perhaps that I would much rather choose that way to go than the way of advantages and putting the burden of the guy on top. Like, that just doesn't make sense in any way, shape, or form, the way that I see the art. So that's what I would do, and that is my opinion.
Are there any submissions you would add or take away in this rule set?
Oh, excellent. Very good. Thank you for asking. I'm very, very liberal when it comes to that subject, and perhaps most everyone else is not necessarily ready for it. But to be really honest, if I ideally had my way, I would make nothing illegal from blue on, including reaping. So those are my thoughts there on that. I would make nothing illegal. At white belt, I would make, perhaps certain things illegal, and even maybe up to purple belt. I've considered making toe holds illegal until purple belt, making wrist locks illegal until purple belt. I don't know how this should be legal at this point in time and this should be legal at this point in time. I'm not entirely sure how that developed or got started. I don't know. I don't see why knee bars. I don't understand. Maybe if someone could explain it to me, it might be better. But I don't understand why knee bars are illegal until brown belt, but arm bars, which pretty much are doing the exact same function, just on a weaker limb of the body. To your elbow is okay at white. I'm not understanding something. I'm not comprehending why that was. So there are definitely things I don't understand. It's the same application on the knee. It's just on a weaker part of the body, the arm, but that's legal at white, and that's not legal until brown. Why is that not legal till brown? I ask myself these questions, and I don't have a good answer. So there, the other thing that I might, make illegal until purple belt would be heel hooks, but I would also allow heel hooks even in the gi as well, where I'm at right now. Again, that's my opinion. I understand that probably 99% of people out there right now are going to disagree with me, but to be really honest, it's just I think heel hooks are far easier to defend in the gi than they are in no gi, because you can have those sleeves that you can reach down, pull that sleeve up, get it off your heel if you don't have your ankles crossed. So that's my opinion. If no one else shares it, that's fine for right now. But that's what I would do.
You've mentioned some of what is thought of as the dangerous moves in jiu-jitsu. What moves do you think are more injury prone that people maybe overlook?
All of them. I mean, really, truly, honestly, probably the one that least injure the people the most, I would say, is chokes.
Yeah.
Because all you're doing is, for the most part, cutting off blood. to the brain, and so fine. Yes, you do crank the neck on some of those chokes and, go over. Oh, I also have absolutely no problem with going over the face to finish someone in submission. That's absolutely 100% acceptable in my realm of thinking, just to throw that out there as well, just to be as controversial as possible right now. I'm 100% okay with that, with going over the face.
You mean like
perhaps I don't do it all the time. To my training partners, especially people that don't want to train that way. Like, I understand, a training room and that kind of thing. And I'm not there to hurt anybody. But at the same time, these are real, actual techniques that in sport and in, MMA and of course in street 100% could absolutely be used. So I would probably say chokes probably have the least amount of injuries happening to them. But elbow, wrist, knee, ankle, they all have, in my opinion, equal chance of being hurt and you injuring yourself from them, depending on the type of person you may or may not be facing.
Justin, you said go over over the face. I'm guessing, I'm picturing, you have my back and I defend my neck with my chin, and you just
yes.
Go ahead. Okay, that's okay. I'm on the same page on that. Have you ever been injured in a tournament or in a match?
I've never been. I've been very fortunate and lucky. I've never been significantly injured. I've definitely had things tweaked, popped, hyperextended. I had a number of matches stopped in the past. The one that always comes to mind is my match with Chase Wheaton at the Budweiser Cup back in 2007. Man, we had an epic war of a match, and I really liked Chase's game. He was willing to stand up and play takedowns with me. We both had to play bottom. We both had to play top. It's probably one of the most fun, memorable matches that I have, other than being at black belt, was that one there. And it was really that day, that weekend was really a turning point for me in my career and where everything went too. So it was really kind of a pivotal day. But I ended up playing deep half guard incorrectly, and he took my arm in a Kimura, and it went pop, pop, and then just like a shotgun or something going pow, and the ref actually stopped the match. And I got up and I'm shaking my arm at the ref. I'm like, no, I'm fine. You can't stop the match. You can only stop it if I tap. And if I choose to let my arm break, I choose to let my arm break, which I said, out of anger and stupidity. I later that day, after I had cooled off, I went back to that same ref, and I actually, apologized to him and said that I appreciated the fact that he stopped the match, because I had to compete in the Bud Cup professional division the very next day. Well, I had zero use of my left arm, and zero use of it, and it was stupid. And I was just a competitor, and I just had it in my head, oh my gosh, to tap and to concede was just not in my DNA. Wrestling had never taught me that, and much of my years in jiu-jitsu, I was just stubborn in that regard. I just couldn't. The competitor in me couldn't ever seem to want to tap. So I had no use of my left arm that I had to compete in the pro division the very next day, and I faced some tough dudes that very next day too. I faced Rafael Lovato in the first round. And I faced Chase Wheaton in the finals. Once again, it was a rematch from the day before. Our day before match was in the gi, and then the next day the pro division was no gi. And so it was a very I only had really use of my right arm. I didn't even have I had zero movement. Range of motion in my left elbow, because I had let him nearly blast it the day before. And so probably the only reason I was probably even there was because the ref stopped it. So I've never been significantly injured. I've never torn any ligaments. I've never broken any bones. I've been very fortunate in that regard. I've been put to sleep many a time. Where I didn't tap and I ended up, fast asleep on the mat. I've done it on the world championship stage. So again, that competitor in me, I think as I'm, starting to have more years in this art, I let go of that. I think a little bit more each year, especially on the training mat. My gosh, you should have seen me back in my teen days. Even on the training mat, there were, I was 15 training with adults, and like they're like trying like not to break my arm and don't want to break my arm, and I'm not tapping. And I've had my arms, especially my arms, popped a number of times. I'm probably kind of starting to pay for it a little bit. I didn't have a significant injury this past year, but I developed really bad tendonitis in both of my elbows to a point where I couldn't even train at all. In fact, from August all the way through up to the beginning of November and December, I was able to do absolutely nothing but teach.
I didn't realize that. And so your elbows are feeling better?
Yes, yeah, it's subsided now. It kept me out, and that's unfortunate. It kept me from being able to train, kept me from being able to compete. I think I took so many things for granted, especially my health, and I'm realizing now that I can't keep doing that, especially in the training room too, where it's like it's not even important, like nothing's really on the line. So I'm getting better there, still slowly, learning those lessons, and, I'm going to, start paying for it more now as, a result. But I'm finally, it took 5 months, but I'm finally 100% now. And, it was hard for me I wanted to do so many other things. And I finally, my coaches had to intervene and pretty much tell me, no, you're done for this year. You need to let your body heal. I was on a very self-destructive path with my training, and I just couldn't accept it because I hadn't done well. And I was just looking for that next thing. Like perhaps we can, just end the year on a high note. And my coach was like, no, we need to fold the rest of this year. We need to fold our hand right now. We'll come back. We'll live to fight, another day. And so it was hard for me to accept, and I probably wasn't going to accept it because this year, and I'll just call it what it is, sums up the least successful year of competition I've had in over a decade. And so that was hard for me to accept, but hopefully a lesson that I will learn and have learned the hard way. And I'm very much looking forward to this, upcoming year.
What plans do you have for this upcoming year?
I did have a match set up with Giovanni Martinez, but that kind of fell through. The only things that I have right now planned on the schedule for me this year, I'll fight again for Legacy Fighting Championships April 20th, or I'm sorry, I believe April 22nd. And then I will fight for them again in September of this year. And that's all I have planned right now. So going to put it all on the line.
Do you think you'll do some grappling submission only tournaments, or any gi jiu-jitsu or any no gi stuff, or do you have any idea of what you might be doing?
Right now, if I spoke to you honestly, 100%, right now I have absolutely nothing lined up in the realms of doing grappling tournaments or anything like that. Absolutely nothing lined up. In that regard, I'm not saying that I'm not going to slam the door shut, and that there won't be, but I don't have anything planned right now in the form of grappling or jiu-jitsu.
Okay, and there's not a strong desire to do that as you look at your calendar?
Not to be really honest, not really anymore. And if I did, it's only for matches that I want to have that maybe didn't happen, or I think are interesting and would like to have happen. And I'm not really big into calling opponents out, but I thought a match between me and Giovanni Martinez, which has never happened before, kind of like the newer generation coming up, and I'm now kind of the generation that's kind of been there for a while. I thought that match would be interesting. A matchup, between me and maybe even Gianni Grippo, I thought would be another interesting match. He's again someone that I watched for, many years, coming up from blue and purple belt, all the way up. So, but again, I'm not really big into calling opponents out. It would just be like, what could possibly be interesting, right now that, fans, may or may not want to see. And, so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. But like I said, I have nothing lined up in that regard yet. I probably wouldn't take anything, honestly, in the gi. There would probably be no gi matches that I would like to have, quote unquote, super fights, if you will, or super fight events. I'll never slam anything shut. Any opportunity, presented to me, I'll always discuss, with my coach, Professor Rafael, and we'll always make the best decision for us.
Sounds good. So if the phone rings and you've got somebody wanting to put a super fight on, you'll definitely listen to them and hear what they have to say.
Absolutely. I'd never commit to anything without talking, to my coaches first. But I would definitely entertain, the idea.
Okay. Justin, you mentioned kind of dealing, competing and being stuck in a bad spot and just not wanting to tap. And maybe that's a little bit like the wrestler inside of you, that mentality. Tell me about the difference of cultures of wrestling and jiu-jitsu and how maybe just how they're different.
I mean, I'll tell you from my experience. Yeah. This may not be everyone's experience. I know that, sometimes I go back and I visit, some wrestling rooms nowadays. I like, especially here in Oklahoma, I feel like the culture has, really changed. But when I was coming up through, my dad always, sought out the highest, most credible, most experienced instructors and teachers and coaches that he could find in anything he got me into. So me, 4 years old, and, for those that, don't know me and don't know me on a personal level, this might be hard to understand, but I was not an aggressive kid. I was not a confident kid. In fact, I hated wrestling for years, 5, 6, 7 years. I hated it. I didn't like Taekwondo. I was not confrontational. I was very shy, very reserved. I didn't like to talk. I didn't speak to many people. Even through high school, I didn't have many friends. I very much kind of kept to myself. And, 10, 15 plus years of martial arts experience, for the most part, when I'm in that environment has kind of broken me out of that shell. There are still times where, you might catch me in, different environments depending on who I'm with, where you'll still see that very, very shy kid, there. So that might be hard for people to understand, but, I didn't enjoy wrestling at all. It was hard. I was pushed hard. My first year, my very first wrestling coach ever was Johnny Hendricks' father, Coach Kevin Hendricks. And I was actually on Johnny's team, way back at 4 years old, and he would have been, I can't remember, right around 8 years. He's about 3 or 4 years older than I am. So he would have been 8, 9, right around that age. And then that was the only year he was there, because Johnny then went on to wrestle middle school. Soon after that. And I spent some time on some other teams as well. But my whole first year I did there. And, I remember different things that they did to us. I remember when, we had our first tournament, and then the next practice back, we went through another hard practice, and, they put everyone on the line to run extra sprints. And, it wasn't really thrown out there like this, but it was for all those kids that cried in any way, shape, or form at the tournament last weekend, the sisters started pointing you out. You get back on the line. And they started running us, and they ran us until we stopped crying. So that was kind of I'm 4 years old, and this is what I was being put. That was my experience. And I got actually to be where I was, pretty good technically in the training room, but I was not, I couldn't bring it out in competition, and I think that's just because of the way, I really believe, had I been able to go watch some wrestling practices first, which didn't happen for me, and able to go watch some wrestling competitions happen first, which again didn't happen. I got thrown into it right then and there. And for me and the person that I was, it created many mental barriers, many mental blocks that I never was able to, took me, 10, 12 years to actually work and break through those. And now I'm extremely confident in, walking out and competing or whatever it is I'm doing now, and that is really, just because my dad wouldn't let me quit. I wanted to quit every year. Well, my dad would not let me quit. There were times I'd hide under the bed. And my dad, he's a physician, oh, Dad, I'm hiding under the bed. I don't feel good, stomach ache or whatever. I'd be like, nope, you're going to practice. I couldn't fool I couldn't play sick. So yeah, that was, things that, happened to me. And the wrestling room, for me, I had a very, tough and hard coach. Again, so thankful for that, but had a very tough, hard coach, named Andy Howington, in middle school and high school wrestling. And I still, see him quite often, and go train with him quite often, today. And he trained me, through middle school and high school. And, man, those were, some tough times. And that a wrestling room can really be, it's a competitive sport. And you're told that when you go in there, you've got people, vying for your spot pretty much every week. So you view your training partners are your training partners, but they're also in a lot of ways your competition, especially if they don't have a spot and they want your spot. It's like competition every single day. And that's what, it was kind of like for me. It was like, beat each other down as hard and as fast as you can, each and every single moment in time that you're in the room. Yes, you would drill and all that other kind of stuff. But practices were long, hard, grueling. So we lost a duel to Chickasha, Oklahoma. I think 7th grade, and we lost, what was the score? It was like 64-9, and not a good score. And we came back that next day, and my coach, we ran over 100 sprints and over 50 of them timed. And I say over 100 because it was about 100, but we didn't make some of the timed ones at times, so we had to do those over. So that was the kind of thing that I was put through in wrestling. And then, of course, coming to jiu-jitsu, that was not really my experience at all. And I'm not saying one is better than the other, or one is bad and one is good. I'm saying that there's give and take, pros and cons to both. Going through all that and then having a father that, and both my mother and father, but having both a mother and father that would not let me quit at all. I never missed practice. I never got a day off from practice. So it made me very, very tough. I'm I'm able to grit things out, even things in life. I'm able to, hard nose, push through it, and I can do that, and I'm built for that. Or I say that very arrogantly right now. You never know what the future brings. But, it made me very tough. And then I brought, kind of that style to jiu-jitsu. And, in the jiu-jitsu room, I like the fact that the jiu-jitsu training room is normally very family-oriented. You've got guys that will push hard and want to be competitors. But in the exact same room, you've got people who are, maybe a little older, or maybe just, are doing this more for fun. You just want to learn the art, and they're not there to, when sparring, starts and you slap hands, they're not there to really kill you. Like my experience was with most people that I wrestled, even in the training room. And not even, like, sometimes you mix it up with different teams. I would go to other teams and people feel like they would want to kill me, So that was like I didn't, so when I went to jiu-jitsu, it took me a long time for them to and even today, they probably could still, see and find some of that in me. But it took them a long time to get me to really calm down, if you will, when I would go and I would spar jiu-jitsu. And I think it really helped that I got in it at such a young age. And I would wrestle for like 5 months of the year, and I would do jiu-jitsu for 7 months of the year when wrestling season was over. And so I did again. I was, another part of developing and meshing both styles that I got to do from age 12 on. And so very, very different. No, I will not say one is better than the other. I think both can and have benefits to each kind of training room. I like the fact that jiu-jitsu can be kind of slower and more methodical at times. And I hated training in the gi, and that's why I'm a big, advocate of training of training training everything. Gi, no gi, jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu, and that's kind of how I like to think about it. And, cause you can't just, think, oh, the gi is the only way or no gi is the only way. I really do think that there are pros and cons, obviously, but, to both, but, both have, very good pros that can be meshed together as well. I like the fact that the gi, you can hold the gi and you can slow things down and you can really see things progress, develop. You can learn to keep pressure. You can learn to see positions develop. You don't always have to be go, 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 fast, 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 hard, hard, hard. Very much the way you have to do in no gi and or wrestling. So that has been my experiences with both. And I love martial arts. I love training. I love grappling. Do it all. Get proficient at it all. Be the best you can be all around. You never know what a situation may or may not call for and or have. So, to be as well-rounded as possible is my and should be the ultimate goal.
Do you think that some of the cultural differences of jiu-jitsu, because the stakes are so high with injury, like I need to tap, or I'm going to go see the doctor tomorrow, versus wrestling, you just fight, you fight until the ref says you're pinned or until the time's up, or is that part of, you think, maybe some of the differences as far as the attitude during training, as far as sometimes your refusal to tap sometimes, or into that attitude you had?
That's a very interesting and absolutely excellent question. One that, and I'm usually not too many times caught off guard these days by questions, but that's honestly one that kind of catches me off guard, and one that I've never really considered. But you know what? Right now, as I initially think about it, just thoughts off the top of my head, I would have to say I agree with you. In that regard, especially to someone where I came from, coming from wrestling, and again, we don't really have submissions in wrestling, so yeah, you kind of can just go, push hard the whole time. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, if you get caught, you need to recognize and understand you've been caught, and or yes, you're going to could very well possibly be at the doctor's office the very next day if you don't, which I very thankfully never did end up there, even though there were many times I didn't tap and I ended up with hyperextended elbows and such, and maybe couldn't train hard for back at that age when I used to recover in a day or two, maybe couldn't train hard for a week and I'd be back, and I just took it for granted back then, and so now I get to pay for it now, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I've never really actually considered that question, but right now off the top of my head I would have to say that I agree with you in that regard.
Okay. You started wrestling at 4. You didn't have a great time, it sounds like, but you had to stick it out. And now you find yourself in a place where you're teaching jiu-jitsu to kids a similar age. Maybe you could share some things that you do as a coach that's similar to what you learned as wrestling, or maybe some things that you the way you teach the kids that's quite a bit different than the way you did in the wrestling room.
Yeah, it is different. It's absolutely different. Again, I'm not going to say better and or nor worse, but it is different. It's a martial arts setting. It's it's not a wrestling room setting. It's not the same sport. It's not the same art. And to be really honest, in jiu-jitsu, I don't want it to be. Now, some of the concepts when it comes to training are still the same. I try to instill values, instill concepts and ideas of training into these kids, and that's very important. That's a very important part. I want them to kind of find these principles and values on their own. Yes, sometimes I will come right out and say them, but I want them to find, work ethic and understand the value of hard work, on their own, as opposed to where it's really forced upon you in wrestling. You're not going to make the team. And wrestling can be also it just has a culture of having a very hard coach yelling at you. It's usually most times negative punishment and or negative reinforcement, as opposed to positive reinforcement, which I try to use a lot or I have to use a lot in the jiu-jitsu room. But the other part that kind of comes along with that too, that's often not talked about, is wrestling is also not nearly as expensive as jiu-jitsu. A wrestling club to join is not nearly as expensive. Dues, memberships, different things are not nearly as expensive. Equipment, everything, not nearly as expensive. When you start wrestling for a school team, it's all, other than, you're providing your own wrestling shoes for yourself and your own headgear, it's all provided for you. All the travel, everything is provided, in that regard. That's not so in jiu-jitsu. And if you go to wrestle for a middle school, high school, again, the training is free. because it's part of your school hour. So wrestling is free in that regard. Jiu-jitsu isn't. So you're like, there's a part, in jiu-jitsu where, you also have to be very customer service savvy. And that's a part that I've, tried to work on a lot. And, this is where I have to throw a shout out and, to not only Professor Rafael for making me the instructor and helping me be the instructor I am, but also his wife, who also runs the front part of the business, the front office part of the business, Tina Lovato. And, when I started teaching the kids, I was much younger than I am at the moment, and I still had certain tendencies to be fairly hard based on, where I was at in my, competitive career in jiu-jitsu, based upon what I had been through for wrestling. And so those were lessons that I had to learn as well. And that's just a quick, tangent side note off to the side real quick. But again, I don't necessarily try to recreate a wrestling environment, but I do try to instill values such as hard work, and what that gets you, the reward that gets you down the line. Especially hard work, but I also stress and emphasize that not everyone in the jiu-jitsu room needs to be a competitor. Yes, I do like and encourage everyone to compete, and should at least do once at each belt, if not at least just once in their lifetime. I do always encourage that because it is challenging. It takes you out of your comfort zone. I want them to learn and feel that and to have at least been there once in their life to understand what it's like and understand what others, go through. And how much, that it does make you better. Win, lose, draw, whatever, you get better from the experience. So I try to, instill that kind of concept and idea a lot as well. I push them hard. We have a competition team that I push harder. It's a privilege to join that team. And so, yes, we have a competition team as well. But I also always stress to them, not everyone needs to be a competitor. We have there are places in this art, just as in life, that we take and need all kinds of people. I've got plenty of kids right now that don't compete, and they like being in the training room, helping their partners train for tournaments. They like helping teach newer, lower belt ranking kids as well. And it's so awesome to watch them, really take it upon themselves and something they're passionate about, and they give back and they help the art grow in that way as well. And I've got plenty, probably half the program is like that, and I absolutely love that about our program out here, and watching these kids, do their very best and give their very best, and teaching not just moves that I've taught them, but also hearing them say certain things like I've just said to you now, down to lower students or lower ranking students that look up to them, down to younger students who look up to them. This year especially, we just put in like a leadership program where now I have a couple of the teens that have been with me for the past 5 years that are now high-ranking green belts and blue belts, and a couple of them orange belts. I got two girls that are orange belts, and they're all part of the leadership team, and they help assist classes now. And I have them do different things like run warm-ups, and if they have a certain little thing that they really do, I even let them show their a little variation or move in to the other kids in class at times. And so it's been really just, an absolutely amazing experience watching, all of that happen and come to fruition now. And have all that. So it's just one more thing. I don't try to recreate a wrestling room. I really like seeing, build these kids up and seeing them step up into real leadership, even teacher instructor roles. And we call them assistants right now. And that's what they do. They don't actually run the class by themselves. And then the other thing that I do that I'm really big on, just based on my own experience, was, those that want to, get in, we're very, we never really try to push or force or impress, people to sign up now or get involved in classes now. They're always welcome to, try a free class. And, I think that's a great thing. But, I'm always also an advocate of coming and watching first, because I wish I had been able to come and just watch first. And we really leave it up to the athlete or to the kid maybe coming in. If he really does not want to participate in class that day, by all means, he's more than welcome to sit off to the side with his parents and watch. Because we take as young as 4, which I believe is, like I said, for me it was, an extremely sensitive, point in time in my life where I created a lot of, mental barriers for myself that took, 10 plus years to get over. And, I had parents that wouldn't let me quit. So I was around for the 10 years, but you can never know how long you're going to have, kids either. And I try to do my best to, no matter what sort of, even if they didn't come in and participate in class, if they left there feeling better, even about themselves, and it felt like it was an accepting environment. So that was also very important to create. And then the same thing with competition. I always encourage, to go watch 1, maybe even 2 competitions. If you feel it's something you want to do or get into before you compete, go and watch. See what that environment is like. See, you kind of get a sense of what's going to happen. And so that's also very important. As well. Again, I take it from my own experience. I wish I had been able to go watch a couple, because it created some mental barriers for me that took me a very long time to get over. So we never, I never push any of them to compete. If they are not, like maybe they did 5 competitions in a row and they're maybe even feeling burned out, I let that be okay. I don't try to push kids, especially the younger ones, to ever feel like they have to compete. I want them to go because they want to go. And so that's also, something else that was very important. So those are the differences, that I try to, create and recreate, as far as blending, some certain, concepts from wrestling into it, but also leaving, it is still very family oriented, accepting kind of, natured and positive environment, which I also believe is very important.
That's great. And you mentioned that, like, letting the kids go watch a competition. The competition sounds crazy, if you've never seen it. And you go and, oh, this is what I'm doing in class, but people I don't know. And I think that would help a lot of kids to go. You go watch one. I should have signed up. I'll sign up next time. And it seems like an easy bridge for the kids to make. You've had a lot of success in grappling with your takedowns. Could you maybe give some advice, offense or defense, about where maybe, like, there's a lot of holes in jiu-jitsu people's, put everybody in a big group, and a lot of players' stand-up game. Could you give us some advice maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. Over the years, I've had very, very little success in recreating that after a certain age. And I'm just going to be very honest right now and call it what it is. I don't have a very good answer for why that is. It just seems to be the case. The number of individuals that I've been able to influence, teach, and impress upon and actually improve their takedown games once they've hit that quote-unquote adult level, if you will, I can use 3 to 4 fingers right now and name off those individuals who have trained with me. For whatever reason, it seems like something that really needs to be developed at a younger age. Now, I am certainly not saying that, should just give up, shouldn't even try. If you ask any of, the students that I teach now, well, adult students anyway, which, for the most part, if I'm not covering a class, I teach the women's only program. It's a part of every single one of their practices, and they probably hate me for it, but that's okay. I believe in it that much. We usually spend maybe 5 to 7 minutes of stand-up or takedown work, if you will, but it always starts with the one thing that you absolutely must have. When you start thinking about good offense and defense of takedowns, there are some number one answers. Oh, what's good defense? Okay, what's your number one defense? Mostly, a lot of times the number one answer for inexperienced people is sprawl. Or what's your number one takedown? Oh, double leg, or whatever it might be. So actually, neither one of those is correct in my opinion. You must have a good stance before you can ever have good offense or defense, either one. And so I work, and that's probably the easier, oftentimes though more. It's really more of an endurance thing that usually becomes to be the problem. But probably the easiest thing that you can teach and impress upon at the adult level is having just a much better stance. And you'd be surprised at how much that really does take your both offense and defense to an entirely new level. And so we every single class I teach, we have a stance motion drill that goes on for maybe a minute's time or whatnot, whatever it is. But I make them, or I shouldn't make them. But when I lead class, it's a part of my lesson. Every single class, I did it every single day, every single time I was ever in class. So that's probably the biggest and number one thing I would advocate. Obviously, you need some drilling of takedowns and technique. You can get better, but to really make it your quote unquote perhaps A game, I've had a very, very hard time ever recreating and or replicating that in someone who is already in their adult years. So once again, I have the kids. I teach the kids program. Most of the kids that I get are usually probably right around somewhere the ages of probably an average of like 8, 9. It's a bigger part of their class. I know that nowadays the rules do not really favor, promote, and or reward takedowns and takedown scenarios, and I don't care. I absolutely don't care. My kids, they are going to know takedowns. They are going to know, they're going to have a good stance. They're going to know takedowns. They're going to know how to defend takedowns. If they want, and I've got plenty of kids that are excellent, and prefer playing guard. And I let that be 100% okay. But I would be remiss as an instructor to teach them only to pull guard because that's what's favorable right now in sport jiu-jitsu. Because my ultimate goal is not to create, necessarily the best sport jiu-jitsu black belt world champions of the next day's coming age or whatnot. My main ultimate goal is to make them the most well-rounded, complete martial artists that I can, to instill in them the confidence that they can walk out onto the street into any walk of life and be confident to follow their heart, hopes, and dreams. That is my goal when it comes to teaching kids. So yes, I make them drill takedowns. I'm going to instill that in them to make them the most complete martial artists that they can be. So I've had a lot more success with the kids program and instilling that than I have at the adult program. But like I said, if there was one thing to just advice-wise to give for anyone all around, have a good stance.
Why is it so important to have a good stance? What bad things, like if I'm walking up to you and I have my legs are straight and then my hands are kind of just reaching out, and I look like I don't look like a wrestler at all in that case. Why is having a good stance so important?
It really keeps you from easily being knocked over, taken down. It gives you a certain set of balance, and having that just provides an extra certain amount of confidence. Biomechanic wise, the lower your center of gravity is towards the ground, the more stable you are, and that's just biomechanics. So being able to, have a good low stance with a straight back, keeping your head and chest up, just provides you with more confidence, right from even if you want to pull guard, you're going to have a lot more confidence in being able to do that, especially if you're going against someone that like me. Like, I shoot from 90 million miles away in most of my matches because I have to, because if I get close enough for them to touch me, they're just going to sit down. And then I miss my points altogether, even though I'm on top. So in that regard, you want to be able to, even still, you don't want to have to feel like you have to just rush approach to sit, in that regard. So that's what I would say to that.
So when you look across the mat and you see the guy with basically no technical stance at all, he's going to pull guard. And so you're as soon as he touches you, you've lost your 2 points. So you would shoot from so far away, as he's going to pull guard anyway, you get like just a takedown. 2 points is just handed to you because of his his stance and his pregame is pull guard no matter what. And
I would say that's depending on the ref and whether the ref likes takedowns or not, and thinks what you did was just a way to bypass the guard pull or not. Based on my own experience, yes, calls are going to be missed from time to time, but I've had some absolutely outrageous, very blatant calls missed during my time. Fortunately, I've had, I think, only one, maybe two matches actually have that actually affect the outcome of the match. I usually was able to overcome it with guard passing, but again, it's just another one of those things that, it makes me very sad to see takedowns so neglected and not really well respected. And I'm certainly not saying that from an athlete's point of view or calling out any certain athlete, and I'm not doing that at all. But when we think about the calls that have been made in the past, I don't know, if you did a study, I would say that you would probably find most people are able to get guard pull or pull guard, and there are probably more blown takedown calls that should have been takedowns as opposed to blown guard pulls that were really guard pulls that someone got takedowns for. I would be willing to bet a lot of money that that's the case. And then also, just to throw it out there too, when you talk about shooting from so far away, that's normally fundamentally incorrect. Just to throw that out there too. I do that because I know I can get away with it, especially when I evaluate someone's stance right from the get-go. And of course, most people that I compete against nowadays, I know them and I know their game, and I know, is this person really going to be able to challenge me on the feet, or am I going to have a real clean, I just need to boom, get in there, takedown. And, so in that regard, some of it is knowing opponent, some of it is evaluating stance, but for the most part, to shoot from as far away as I'll sometimes shoot is normally fundamentally incorrect, just to put that out there as well.
Yeah, good to know, but you're able to look at the person and make a judgment before you even touch them that they are not likely to have a good defense for your takedown because of their stance. You mentioned that having a good stance requires endurance. Can you maybe describe why that's the case?
Just because your knees are bent, your back is straight and up, and you're taking your center of you're probably lowering your body a good 6 to 8 inches closer towards the ground. So it's like holding a squat, but in static form, like the bottom level of a squat. And so eventually your legs are, because you're using your muscles, eventually they're going to burn out, and you're going to be forced to start standing back up straight to let your muscles relax. And so that's where the endurance part comes in. That just comes from doing it a lot. I can stand in a good stance for a full 10 minutes pretty easily, and that's no problem for me because I've pretty much been doing that for the past 25 years of my life. But I do understand that it is something that needs to be built up, and that's why all of the kids that I teach, all of the women that I teach, they do it every single practice.
It sounds like you're basically using your muscles to hold you up opposed to your bone structure. And
exactly.
It causes fatigue. I was hoping to get a little bit of advice from you. If a student is a busy person and they're only able to come in and train maybe once or twice a week, is there anything that you could tell them, or what would you tell a student in that situation to help them continue with their progress?
Be consistent. Even if you can only get in once a week, maybe twice a week, still be consistent. And I know that becomes hard with so many days in between, and everyone's situation is different. I drove back every night from Norman, but that's not always the case. I was able to make it the case for me and go through school, but that's not always the case. Case in point here, I'll talk about my good friend and teammate Jared Dopp, who has been on before. Dopp, where he's at in school right now, most of the time he can only make it to train during the week twice. So he usually makes one technical advanced class a week, and then he'll usually come in on Saturdays for a competition team training. And he was able to, advance very well and do very well in competition for himself. And it's because he was it was usually Tuesday or Wednesday and Saturday, and he never missed. He was always there on those times that he could be there. He made the most of the time that he was in. If he was feeling bad, if he was feeling a little fatigued, a lot of times he knew that he was only there for that night, and he would push through that. So it can be done. You just have to time on the mats, even if you don't even if you just are so fatigued or you're injured or something, you can't spar, you need to be there. You need to be there if it's something you really want. And I'm not saying just to be a good competitor the way that he did and is. I am saying that even if you just want to understand, you need to be there. I have one lady right now in our women's only BJJ class, and she tore her rotator cuff. That's a pretty bad, significant injury, and she still is working through physical therapy, being able to lift her arm all the way above her head. And for the past 2 months, she has come in each and every single class and has watched. So even if you can't be on the mats physically doing something, you still need to be there. You need to keep it as part of your routine. You need to keep it as it's good to be there just for your mind too, to see these moves and just to be there around these people in the environment that are your teammates now. You've probably made close friendships or whatnot. You don't want to lose that just because you can't actually be on the mat physically doing something. So be consistent and make the most of your time while you're there is what I would say.
Well, that's great advice. You've got a lot of students, kids and adults there that you work with. What are some traits that you see in a person that makes you think that they're going to be a good student of Jiu-Jitsu?
A good student or good competitor and or both?
Either one, I guess. Either
one? Yeah, you can't ever know how long you're going to have kids or even have students. It's always hard to see, especially when you think someone has so much potential, and to see life get in the way and they're not it's not always their fault. If you see someone just quit and just throw their potential away or whatnot, that's really hard for me to see and accept. But it's, again, not my call. It's not my life. If there's something you can or I can or anyone can do about that. What makes a great student? I don't think I can really point one thing out, and sometimes especially right at the beginning, sometimes it's really hard to know. I would say right at the beginning, I would say it has to do with consistency and attitude. Do they like being here? Do they like doing what they're doing? Do they like being around everybody? Do they like learning this art? And then if they start having maybe some success in the training room and or competition, a lot of times I've seen new things inside of people just kind of blossom. They were already hard workers already, and now they've tasted a little bit of that, victory in competition, and they like that, and then, so then they really, delve into that, and then, then you'll see at times, man, now they have to deal with a tough loss. How are they going to deal with that? Are they going to up and quit right now? If they keep, if they come back harder, stronger, better, more eager, more hungry. Those are the kind of things and traits that I am always on the lookout for, as opposed to a student that's going to have, good potential or be able to go far in this art. So those are the things that I have one girl right now. She's an orange belt under us right now, and she's been with us. She's been with the program longer than I've been teaching it. She's been with it for about 7.5 to 8 years now already, and her name is Sarah. And it was so funny earlier this year. She had been coming on and off consistently for some of the first couple years that I had been there. Then especially the past probably about 2.5, 3 years, she's been an extremely consistent student. And, she had to take a month off earlier this year. I think it was March, if my memory serves me correctly. And then, she came back in April, and, in the training room, oh my gosh, like a switch had been flipped. She had been gone, hadn't even seen her for a whole month. And she came back, and it was like night and day. And she was doing like extremely well in the training room. And she's one of the smallest in the teens program right now. And man, she gives every single person in there a tough round to go through. And I pulled her aside once, and I was like, it must have been, I don't know, towards the end of April. And I was like, Sarah, like, you know, what happened? Like, you were gone all of April, and then you just came back like Terminator here. And she was like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I just kind of came back, and I just thought to myself, Professor Rader, like, I want to win. And I just busted out laughing. Because it was like so simple an answer. And I understand exactly what she's saying. When she says that,
yeah.
and it just like those are the kind of things that just like inspire me. They bring like so much joy to my life, and it's one of the reasons I love doing what I love doing. We had a real good laugh about it, you know, at that point in time, and then since then she has won every competition she's been in and won them very dominantly. So, you know, those are the kind of things, like, you'll see those experiences kind of happen, you know, but I would say, like, at first, you know, kind of consistency, attitude, and then how they deal with things, how they deal with life as it comes upon them. And sometimes, you know, it's going to take them away for a while, or it might take them away for good. But once again, like, you know, I hope that I have left or done my best to leave as positive an impression and impact on their lives as possible. So those are the things I would say, like, you know, as far as, you know, what's going to make a great student, that would be my answer to that.
Yeah. And that little girl who likes to win now and has realized that, I got to imagine that will carry over in other parts of her life as well.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's, whether she sticks with jiu-jitsu for, you know, another few months or 40 years, it's already benefited her in tremendous ways. Do you have any sponsors you want to mention?
Yes, yeah, I've got some of the best sponsors I could ever ask for. On the Mat and Lucky Gi, my strength and conditioning coach, Luke Tyree, out at Green Strength Training, Brookover Enterprises, PR2 Systems, and Mike Columbus Photography.
Sounds good. Like you have a good group of support there with you.
Absolutely.
Justin, if somebody wanted to keep up with you and what you're doing, what would be a good way for them to do that?
Oh, yeah. You can follow me at facebook.com/DarthRader86. That is my athlete page. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at DarthRader86 as well.
So the Darth part of the Darth Rader, pretty big Star Wars fan?
Huge Star Wars fan. Huge fan. Yes, I am.
Did the new movie, have you seen it?
Yes, I've seen it a couple times.
Did you enjoy it?
I overall enjoyed it. Solid movie, in my opinion. I give it an 8 out of 10 because I'm a fan. I had some knocks against it. There were some things I really liked about it. So all in all, 8 out of 10 in my opinion.
I haven't seen it yet, but I know that some of the Star Wars movies have kind of let people down, like the one with Jar Jar Binks kind of.
Oh goodness, yes.
Okay, so this one is better than that sort of a thing, right?
I would say the overall majority of opinion right now would say absolutely. Now, I just want to get into something real quick.
Okay.
Just because you mentioned Jar Jar, he didn't bother me.
Okay.
Not one bit. He was not a problem for me in the prequel trilogy at all. I didn't mind him. I know some people found him annoying, stupid, the way he spoke, whatever, offensive maybe. I don't even know. He didn't. That was not how it was with me. I didn't mind Jar Jar Binks one bit. So to be really honest, I probably can enjoy the Phantom Menace better and more than most people out there.
Good to know. All right. Well, I need to still get out there and see the movie, but I've heard from multiple sources that enjoy Star Wars that it was actually a good movie, and they seem to hold that up to a high standard as far as wanting it to be a good quality product. So that's good to hear.
Yep, absolutely.
Justin, it's been a pleasure talking with you today. Do you have any closing thoughts or things you want to say to the audience?
Nope. Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to being back on again soon.
Okay. Well, thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
All right. I want to thank Justin Rader one more time for the interview. Really happy to have him share with with you guys. His thoughts and his point system for jiu-jitsu was interesting, but I think it's great that he was able to explain about how important a good stance is, when you approach your opponent, and just by having a good stance could drastically affect how hard you are to take down, or how good your takedown will be. So think about that. It does take energy. Your legs are going to burn out if you're not trained for that. So train for that. Work on that stance, get that low stance, and make your legs work a little bit. And it's a key part of having a good stance is having that endurance.
Yep. I remember a seminar we did, and that was one of the questions he asked. He's like, what's the most important part in your defense? And, people are like hands, underhooks, hips, whatever. And he's like, stance, stance definitely. So, get your stance down, your stance there. It's going to definitely help your takedown defense. And as Byron said, your takedowns. Why? Because Byron, it never fails. So whatever Byron says is right.
Well, Gary, thanks again for saying that I've never failed. And I'm going to have you send that email to my wife, letting her know that I've never failed, because that'd be very nice.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'll write it. I'll write it for you.
She'll probably send you back a long email detailing the many setbacks and failures I've had. So that'd be.
Don't worry, Byron. I got your back.
Thanks. Yeah, you do have my back all the time.
Literally, I have your back
all the time.
That's the thing. It's like jiu-jitsu guys. We literally have each other's back. I like that meme that goes around about jiu-jitsu, and it's like, most of my good friends, we've all choked each other. It happens.
Yeah.
So, friends? You mean sparring partners?
Friends and sparring partners are the same thing.
Yep.
But, hey, if you want to connect with us, there's a few pretty easy ways to do that. Our email address is bjjbrick@gmail.com. Our Facebook page, just search for BJJBrick. It's pretty easy to find. We're also on Instagram, Twitter. There's a YouTube channel that we have going on. I'm hoping to do more with that pretty soon. And we're all over social media. We're not the best at it, but we do appreciate interacting with you guys. Send us a message on Facebook. That's a great way to do things, and we love hearing from you.
Yeah, definitely. Since you like our show, you definitely want one of our gi patches. Our gi patch is Byron hit me in the face with a brick. Well, I've got him in a microphone choke. It's a round gi patch, a smaller gi patch. But if you live in the United States, we'd love to send you one for free to rep our show. Basically, go on to iTunes, give us a review, a funny review if possible. Send us a message at either our Facebook page or bjjbrick@gmail.com. Let us know that you, and if you're in the United States, we'll send you out a free BJJ Brick gi patch. Thank you for supporting our show.
Thank you very much. One thing you can do that doesn't really earn you a free gi patch is telling a friend about the show. But what it does do is let your friend check out the show. And if you enjoy it, the odds are your grappling buddy just might enjoy it as well. So appreciate that.
And then the best thing about it is you guys can talk about the show afterwards. And while you're talking about it, you can also talk about how Byron never fails. So it's always good to talk about that with your friend after each show.
Thanks, Gary. And we'll see if I fail to edit out all these never fail things.
And also, too, if you ever happen to be traveling and you get out here in the Midwest and come to visit Wichita, Kansas for work or pleasure or just for whatever, definitely send us an email. We'd love to train with you.
Yep, a lot of vacations happening here in Wichita, Kansas, Gary.
Well, I tell you, with the blizzards going out on the East Coast, maybe somebody will come to visit.
Yeah, maybe so. By the time this airs, it'll be blizzardy here because we get blizzards and multiple 100-day heats, so we get them all.
Yeah, we get blizzards when we go to Dairy Queen.
I'd take one of those right about now, Gary.
Oh, me too.
Speaking of blizzards at Dairy Queen, Gary, the music is telling us it's time to talk about your audiobook that you've been working on quite a bit. Speaking of saying I've never failed and all this stuff, which we all know is ridiculous, Gary's audiobook is dealing with some kind of failure or lack of failure. Gary, your audiobook this week, I know you've been working very hard on this book. Excited to hear your progress. a lot of emails back and forth, kind of trying to get the details ironed out. But this week is too big to fail, rolling with people who are over 400 pounds.
That's one of my fetishes. I like to roll with people over 400 pounds. It's it's really good for you. Where else can you get better at getting up off of your back when you got somebody 400 pounds on top of you? So I'm telling you, let's go back to our article. The article was talking about, failing, but we need to learn from our mistakes. My first mistake would be rolling with somebody 400 pounds. I should learn and maybe not roll with that person so I don't get hurt, but it's not an option. So, I have to roll with that person. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, little movements and take, satisfaction of, getting out from underneath that person. It's going to make I'm going to have to be really tight with my hips. My hips are going to have to move quickly. All my hooks and underhooks, everything's got to be perfect or I'm going to get smashed. So, I'm not going to fail. I'm not too big to fail. I'm going to learn and I'm going to get better. So, take that to the bank there, Byron.
and for sure this audiobook won't fail to come out. It'll be out very soon.
Most of my audiobooks have failed to come out. Well, actually, the good thing is I failed on every one of them.
You're always learning.
That's positive. Yeah, yep.
And oftentimes you don't even think about them after we hang up on our on the podcast.
Yeah, but did you see what I did right there? I did step 6. I was courageous, and I admitted I failed on every one of them.
Gary.
See, that's the difference between myself and you, Byron. Like, you're always saying you haven't failed. Like, I've heard you say that like 6 times on this episode.
You're making it even worse, man. No, I can't admit to failing even. Oh, you are spinning this thing like a top. Well done, Gary. Well done.
Thank you.
I'm impressed.
Thanks.
We're talking a little bit about rolling with big people. Everyone's welcome on the mat. I weigh about 175 pounds or so. Anytime someone's...
The apples he has in his pocket.
That's true. Usually they're apples. But when someone's like more than 100 pounds than I am, I'm very cautious. And, you could get hurt by somebody who's that significantly bigger than you by accident. Like, you can get hurt by accident a lot of times, but like the risk of it happens a lot. If you fall wrong, injury could happen. It's a higher stakes game for me. And of course, you're welcome on the mat no matter how big or little you are. If you have and we're getting a little bit more serious than we usually do at the end of the show, but I just want everybody to feel like we're not picking on the big guys here, because I know Gary rolls with everybody, and he's rolled more than his fair share and had some brutal rolls with some huge monsters on the mat. So, but my tip, if you're a big person, try not to be real intimidating, and try to roll in a way that people enjoy rolling with you, and realize that you could. If I'm rolling with you, part of it in my mind is I don't want to get hurt on accident. I could trust you fully, but I still don't want you accidentally hurting me by the way we fall together or something like that. So, Gary, some people are just too big to fail, and some are just too big to fall.
Oh, man, that was nice. I like that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
That could have been the better title of your book, but
too big to fall.
Yeah. Why takedowns don't work on.
The bigger they are, the
people.
harder they fall.
There you go. The bigger, yeah, okay. You could. It's not too late to change your audiobook title, Gary, but still, you spend too much time on that, where you won't get the book put out at all.
Oh, don't worry. I don't spend any time at all on it, Brian. You do not have to worry about that.
Well, that's good. Well, Gary, it's been a good time, and we're excited for next week. We've got another show coming out next Monday, and we'll be happy to share that one with you guys as well.
Yep. Stay tuned. We appreciate you. Or not stay tuned. Keep listening. And as Byron said earlier, tell a friend.
And as always, stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to shower.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
If a student is only able to train like 1 to maybe 3 times a week, and they want to have good progression in jiu-jitsu. How is there something they could maybe do to help that their progression move along with limited training time?
I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question again?
Yes, I'll repeat it. Hopefully, I'll do it a little better too.